Welcome back to the True Crime Murder Podcast, where today we talk about the death of Brian Jones's sense of humor. Has he ever had it? Was it ever alive to begin with? You'll find out today.
Nothing. You got nothing there.
I don't know my part of this joke. She said,
you just took an idea and you just went with it. And I don't know. See, this is what I'm talking about, Brian. This is the lack of sense of humor.
Well, I'm just not a great improviser. I've never been a great improviser. You tell me ahead of time, hey, this is what we're going to do. I could run with it.
I'm as good of an improviser as yes, and also a good someone take over. Someone call freeze. Everyone, welcome back to another episode of TV Guys, the show that, if it was 2009, would have had a zombie episode by now. I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And today we are talking about genre-bending television. So if you're like, what the heck does that mean, genre-bending? How many of you guys, you've watched a show and then all of a sudden, like, they do an episode and it is like completely a different genre, switch genres completely. You're like, what in the world is going on? Like, you know, in Ted Lasso, when they have the Coach Beard episode, and you're just like, this is strange and not at all what I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about those today.
Yeah.
And a couple weeks ago, we did our musical episode. And so it's kind of funny that, like, this is coming as close to that because, let's be honest, like, the musical episodes, those are great examples of that.
Yeah.
They just pop out of nowhere.
Some of them fit more than others. Like we talked about the Even Stevens musical, and Disney Channel shows have that kind of like zany is detached from reality a little bit. So that one's not as bad, but like Scrubs doing a musical and some of these other ones is just that. Yeah, definitely genre bending on that end.
Yeah, I felt like that 70s show was the one that was like the most out of the blue. Like, what? This really doesn't fit with anything that you guys do.
I think they just wanted an excuse to showcase 70s music.
That is very likely. 100%. I saw a Facebook meme where speaking of 70s music, because they sing the Joker in it. So it was like someone saying, some people call me a space cowboy, then gets a little bit closer. Some call me the gangster of love. And then it's like the Starbucks barista. I'm just going to write Steve, okay?
That is a good joke.
I thought it was funny.
So we talked earlier, there's a show that's on both of our lists, and I was trying to not tell Matt why I think it's hard to pick an episode of Community. Should we just start there?
We can start there because no, that one, if we're doing like a top 3 list of like best genre bending, I think this would be my number 2, but okay. We can start with Community, no problem.
Okay. The problem with Community has done so many different homage episodes. Like they've done the zombie episode, they've done the mafia episode, they've done all this kind of stuff. But like after a certain point, them doing different genres and homages becomes their thing. So then it becomes not too unnormal. Oh, Community's doing another movie episode. And so that's why it makes it hard because like which one really takes you out of it? Because after a while, it's like, yeah, okay, I'm used to this. That's kind of what this show does.
That's a really good point I hadn't even thought of.
Yeah.
Well done, Brian. This is why you're part of this.
But I think the one that really is the most oddball that I never saw coming, which was in season 5, G.I. Jeff, where it's, except for a few scenes at the end, it's all animated. And it's all like you're watching an 80s cartoon. Like if you just were flipping channels, you probably would just pass it by and not even know you're watching Community. That's the thing that I think sets that episode apart more than some of the other Community episodes.
Yeah, that was a unique episode. I don't know if I was like, oh, I really like this episode, but it was very, very much like the parody of that time. And that was probably more meta than I think a lot of their sort of jokes are. Like Community is a very meta show.
Yeah.
But I felt like this one was so much like parody of G.I. Joe and just really like the rules that you couldn't break in G.I. Joe of like, oh, there's all this shooting going, but no one actually gets hurt. No one actually gets killed. And then they're finally like, yeah, we're actually killing people in this. And they're like, wait, you're killing people in this? Like that they're very clearly breaking the rules of the G.I. Joe animated universe.
Yeah. for sure. It's like that whole thing. Like, there's how many kids shows have shootouts and no one ever dies.
A lot of them. I mean, back in the 90s, like kids shows were like, well, we want to have action, but we don't want to make parents mad. So we'll balance it with like the stormtrooper aim. No one can shoot, no one can get hurt, no one can die.
And so that's why this one was so funny, because not only did you have like those tropes and making fun of the 80s shows, there's also a lot of in jokes in communities. Like Shirley's character was called Two Kids, and all she ever said was, I got 2 kids. And it's like, if you're watching it, they're making fun of their own characters in the genre of the 80s cartoons.
That's true. Yes, you are right. So that episode was so remind me of what was going on in that episode, because there was also something that was going, like the reason that Jeff was doing this and like had something to do with his father issues. I can't remember 100%.
No, I think it was because Jeff turned 40 and he was having like a midlife crisis, like, oh, I'm old. And so like it was like he was resorting to the cartoons and the stuff that he watched as a kid. And I don't think he had like not overdose, but he had like drank a bunch or something and it somehow ended up in the hospital.
Gotcha. Which is a really like serious sort of I just realized, like, talking about serious and like getting into something that would be that way, there's so many episodes of Futurama that are like this, like very serious, like the one where Leela gets stabbed by the wasp. I mentioned that last time we talked about Futurama, where she gets stabbed by the wasp, and then it like goes into this like really sad thing of like how it went through her and it got Fry, and then Fry dies, and like Leela's living with the grief of Fry being dead. Like, that's a really heartbreaking episode, and sure, there's funny parts of it, but that itself is genre bending. But I didn't have that on my list, and I didn't even think to consider those ones where it's like, yeah, this is a comedy show, but this is the episode that's more serious.
Yeah,
didn't even think about that. Mm-hmm. So your number 3, what you're saying is with Community would be that episode that's what you're picking.
Yes, and there is a lot to choose from. Like we talked about, they mess with genres and homages a lot on that show, and I don't think it's up currently, but we had an episode early on where we talked about the different Community episodes that did that. But as things like, after a while, that became its thing. It became its own genre.
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and push mine. It is number 2, so I'm gonna push it off to number 2. I know I was like, yeah, we'll talk about it too, but we'll come back to this. Community, we're gonna make full circle, because I always cheat, because I have 2 episodes of Community, and one of them like is actually like the best to me, but I've talked about it so much, I'm like, we can talk about another one too. Okay. So my number 3 that I have, I feel like all of these episodes I'm going to talk about, apart from my honorable mentions, are ones that I've talked about before, because we've talked about what are some of the best Christmas episodes, and I went to Smallville season 5 episode 9 called Lexmas. And so this is my number 3 for genre bending, because Smallville was another show that did legitimately change genres a lot, but it didn't do it in a meta way like a Community did. It just, they have the grounds for like, okay, we've got Superman, and he can do a lot of stuff. And so because he can do a lot of stuff, and because we have all of these like bad guys that are kind of monster of the week sort of things, we can do a lot where we just blame it on kryptonite. So they had like a zombies episode late in the series. They had a horror episode. They had one that was, it was very memorable. This isn't what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Lexus. But there was one where it was Saw. Like this employee from LexCorp like was mad at he got fired and was mad at Lionel Luthor. So he was able to like arrange something where he kidnaps Lionel and he puts him in like this cell, and he has to get out of this cell, and like there's like a couple different stages, and it actually ends up being a really good episode, because spoiler alert, it's like a 10-year-old series, too bad, but that was the episode that he finds out Clark's secret, or like confirms Clark's secret that he knows he's Superman, or he's superpowered. Mm-hmm. So it ends up being like a really good episode, but it was just so like, okay, you guys are not even trying to hide the fact that you're doing Saw in Smallville, like not even a little bit. I think the guy, when he comes on the video, when he comes on, I think he even says like, I want to play a game. I'm like, you're just taking the lines right out of there. You can't. But Lexmas was one that was in, I think I said the season 5, episode 9. Lexmas was really well done because this is Lex Luthor is in season 5, like seasons 1 through 4, he actually is an ally with Clark, and like he's a good friend with Clark, especially early on. Like they immediately hit it off, they immediately bond. But you know, Jonathan Clark's dad is wary of Lex because he's a Luthor, and like, you know, you do see the reasons like why someone should be wary of Lex, and you see like those little hints about who he's going to become, because we all know Lex Luthor is Superman's big bad guy. And so Smallville was really good at giving him the arc of going from being friends to like that part of him he couldn't shake that causes him to snap and turn to villainy. And season 5 is really like when he's in the middle of that choice of, am I going to go to that or not? And so he starts running for like the Senate race in Kansas, and Jonathan Kent, in order so that Lex doesn't get into that position of power, because he knows how corrupting power would be for him, he actually decides to run against him, and he's doing really, really well. And so the episode starts off with Lex meeting in like some like back alley somewhere of like, I want Jonathan out of the race. I want you to destroy him, you know, like not like a hit, like take him out, but like, I don't want him to be able to run. And so after he does that, then he gets mugged in this, like as he's leaving, and he gets shot in the mugging, and then he is in the hospital. But while he's in the hospital, his brain does this firing where it's a sort of like Christmas Carol / like a Family Man / one of these other Christmas ones that you've seen, where it's like he sees this glimpse of a life if he makes the right choices. Like starting after that, if he like takes this gift of this near-death experience and decides to drop out of the race and like denounce his father who has been controlling so much, and like give up his position of power, like what that would do for his heart. And so you get to see Lex with everything that he's ever wanted, and like he's married to Lana in the episode, the girl that he loves, and like he has a kid with her, and like he never got to celebrate Christmas growing up, so like he has like this big tree, and like they're actually celebrating Christmas as a family. He's close with the Kents, and like they invite like every year they have a big Christmas party. He's like all this stuff that he wants. But then in the middle of that, Lana, because she was pregnant at the time, goes into labor, but then she can't take it, and she needs blood transfusions, and she ends up dying. And so like Lex, while she's in the hospital, goes to his dad and is like, Dad, you can save her. You have the money. He's like, you decided to give up that money long ago. And like that whole thing that like, if you would have held on to that power and that money, then you could have saved her. And so at the end of the episode, he decides he's not dropping out of the race. He is going to double down on, yes, take out Jonathan Kent, don't let him be in the race, that sort of thing. And that episode is so good because it is like that last glimpse you see of like good Lex, and you're like, no, you can do this, you can make the right choice, please make the right choice. You see that you can have the things that you want. And he still like doubles down on it because he thinks that if he has the power, if he has the money, he can protect the people he loves, and that's where he goes wrong all the time. So
kind of sounds like they wanted to do like this Christmas stuff and found a way to engineer it into an episode like backwards almost.
Yeah, probably. But yeah. I agree. And like the way that they ended up doing it is just so well done. It still is, you know, CW quality and etc. But it's like, this was such a good episode, and this was such a good like defining moment for him. And especially like so much happens in season 5 that like a couple episodes later, Jonathan actually even dies and has a heart attack. And I almost picked that episode because that was like the 100th episode that they did, and that was a little bit of genre bending too, because they did like this thing where Clark was able to, after like Lana dies in that episode, Clark's like, no, I have to go and save her. And so like they reverse time, and in order to save Lana, Jonathan ends up dying, and they can't reverse that. And so they kind of like bend the rules in that episode too. But season 5 just like was really that point of no return. And then they ended up sucking season 6 through 10. So whatever.
There
you go.
It sounds like an interesting episode. I like the end. Like it was like, oh, it's all predictable. He's gonna be happy ever after. But like, no, this guy's still Lex Luthor. Like he's still gonna be evil. Like exactly. I like when they make you. It's not so cheesy.
And they tease you about it too. It's like he has the choice. He could have chosen. He had all these opportunities where he could have done the right thing, and he kept making the wrong choice, and that led him to it. It's like that is so heartbreaking to watch someone slowly self-implode. You know.
Yes.
Which, if you're watching Better Call Saul right now, you know, final season, Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, same thing. Like,
Yeah.
you watch this main character slowly implode over the course of how many seasons, and you're
Mhm.
like, come on, man, just make better choices.
I think that's what makes Better Call Saul almost a better show. I mean, I'll save a lot of this commentary because we're going to do episodes on these shows. In fact, we've been saying that for a long time. But I think we actually have it planned out coming up within the next few months or so. But it's just like we see Saul / Jimmy's backstory. And it's like at the beginning of the show, like he wasn't set out to be like, I'm going to be corrupt. Like he tried to do it straight and then just realized, nope, this isn't going to work for me. I am a criminal at heart. This is how I function, and that's where I'm comfortable.
Yeah, it has those self-destructive tendencies. And without giving anything away of this new season, because I know, Brian, I don't think you've watched any of this new season.
No, I haven't.
But where they're sticking this landing, it actually feels like Saul / Jimmy ends up being the heart of all like the Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad universe, where it's like he kind of ends up almost the main character of everything, and that Breaking Bad ends up now functioning as this is the show where one man came into this world that had been established in this universe through Better Call Saul and just destroys everything. Yes. Like how many people die that we see in Better Call Saul? Like all these guys are like all the Salamancas and Hector and Nacho and all these guys are sharing this, and Gus, they're all sharing screen, and you're like, every single one of these guys died because of Walt. Like how much of a wrecking ball that guy was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I haven't gone back and rewatched much of Breaking Bad. I need to do that sometime. The biggest thing, and I mean, obviously they have to answer with ending Better Call Saul, is what happened to Kim, because there's no mention of Kim. Kim's not in Breaking Bad. It's like, is she dead? Is she in hiding? Why is she not in the picture at all? Because that's the main one thing. And obviously they can't not answer that.
Yeah, I think by the time this episode airs, it'll be Better Call Saul had just had its finale, if I'm doing my math right in my head. And so hopefully we'll have known at that point 100% what's going on with Kim. And I mean, they can't not do it. Like you just watch it, like they can't not address that. So
it's like at the beginning, because at the beginning we also had Chuck, well then Chuck died, and like there are other characters, but I feel like other characters aren't as integral to Saul's life.
Exactly. Like every lawyer he interacts with, you're like, this guy easily could still be around practicing law, or they could have gotten fired, or they could be dead. You know, it doesn't. That doesn't factor into anything with Breaking Bad.
Like even like Howard Hanlon. Like I know you said they might be doing some stuff with him this season, but it's like he could just be still working at HHM during Breaking Bad, just not involved in anything.
Yep, exactly.
All right.
So you're number 2.
My number 2 is one. It's the Scream episode of Boy Meets World, and then there was Sean.
That's a really good pick.
Which they kind of have the tone of like the silly humor of Boy Meets World, but it really is. It's like all of a sudden we're just gonna do Scream and we're gonna make fun of horror movies. Like what?
Yep.
And of course, it has the normal cop out of it's a dream sequence and Sean is dreaming it, but it is kind of cool. You get all of our main characters stuck in the school, and there's a killer on the loose, and like of course they bring in this new kid Kenny just to be the first one to die, and then Feeney dies, the janitor dies, and then they're running around like what? Like,
and they have special guest Jennifer Love Pfefferman. Is that?
Yep, Jennifer Love Hewitt comes in as Jennifer Love Pfefferman as a callback to her being in the Scream movies.
No, she wasn't in Scream, but she was.
What was it? The one? How do?
She was in
I know what you did last. No, I know what you did last summer.
Yes. No, she wasn't in Buffy. I don't know. I don't follow Jennifer Love Hewitt's career at all, so I don't really care. But you're right. She was in I know what you did.
Yeah. There's a really clever joke. They're talking about it's just like that movie with the hot chick from Party of Five, because Jennifer Love Hewitt's in Party of Five, and we're like, who? Like, oh, you mean Neve Campbell? Who was
that's a good joke.
Yeah. And of course, throughout the episode, and I have somewhat more like adult jokes than they have it in Boy Meets World. Like Boy Meets World talked about more adult topics, but for instance, there's like South Park references, multiple ones in this episode. Like when Eric and Jack show up, he does the towel, like I think it's towel. He goes, "Howdy-ho!" And then at one point they kill the new character they have to kill is named Kenny, and Eric does the, oh my God, they killed Kenny.
Yep.
And at the time, South Park was new. Like, it was the brand new show. And it's like, for an ABC, like, TGIF show to making blatant South Park references was kind of gutsy at the time, I think.
Yeah, let's they were probably just like, hey, look, we're cool and hip. Look at us, kids. We can do this.
Well, at one point they're saying, like, virgins always live in these movies. So if you're not a virgin, you're dead. And then Eric and Jack are like, I'm dead. And then Sean goes, I'll get as sick as you can get without actually dying.
I forgot about that. That's a racy joke for that TV show, but it's pretty good.
And then, of course, at the very end, everyone dies except Sean, and Sean unmasks them. And the killer kills everyone except for Sean, Corey, and Topanga, and he puts Corey and Topanga's hands together, and then reveals that the killer was also Sean the whole time. That's why they tell you in the episode title, and then there was Sean.
Oh yeah.
And it was a whole dream sequence about how Sean wanted to put Corey and Topanga back together and somehow kill everybody else.
I bet whoever came up with that title feels really good about themselves. Like, that book, and then there was none. Well, this kind of rhymes, but also then there was Sean. He was the killer. It works on so many levels. I'm like, all right, calm down, John. We're fine. We'll do it. Just ease up there, buddy.
Yeah. Oh, and also another one, as when Feeney dies, like he falls over and there's scissors is in his back, and it's after they had already established that that the only people who die are people who aren't virgins, and I was like, oh, go Feeney.
Yeah, I forgot about all of these jokes. But.
Yeah, so it's the racy humor, the murder mystery stuff, the random Jennifer Love Hewitt Jennifer Love Pfefferman coming out of nowhere. They even had like the phone call where the killer is talking to Eric on the phone, and Eric does the whole thing where he's like miming, talking talking on and on and on. He's like, he says he's the killer. He says he's going to come here. He says he wants to wait right now. And everyone's running around. So they do all the tropes, the whole thing. Where like, and Sean's narrating it. He says, well, then the killer's going to come walk right behind us, and no one's going to see. And they all like look behind them, and then the killer runs in front of them instead with like the music.
I remember that. And
like the cast has said in interviews, this is one of their most favorite episodes to film. And I believe it. Like that looks like it would be a blast to just do all these jokes in the hallway.
Oh yeah, you get to have fun with the concept, and they absolutely did. And that's one thing that I love. Like my number one is one that has like so much fun with the concept, and you can tell everyone enjoyed it, and it was very much fan service. So we'll get to that. But
same thing with my number one.
Look at that. We might have the same one.
We do not. Although I know that.
Okay, we don't have the same one. Well, let's get back into Community. So the episode that is legitimately my number two and is knocking on the door for number one of my favorite Community episodes, period, is I Love in season 2, episode 6. Yeah. Epidemiology. You already mentioned it. It's the zombies one.
That's season 2.
I know. That's right. I said season 2 episode.
Oh, I thought you said season 6. I thought you said season 6.
There's not a season 6, is there?
There is a season 6.
There is a season 6 because 6 seasons in the movie, but season 6 wasn't as good.
No.
Anyway, but yeah, so this is the like Community at its best, and this is like when you take a new genre and you add to it, because this episode I've talked about this before, and that's why I have another one here, so we don't have to talk too much about it. But it's just like every joke to me in this episode lands, but the whole concept is just absolutely hilarious. Sure, it's like, we got this military grade whatever, and it's turning everyone into zombies. That's a fine start, but the added element that makes it to me like stand out so well is the juxtaposition of the entire soundtrack being ABBA. Mm-hmm. And so like the dean left this ABBA playlist on for the party, and it's a joke about like how he doesn't understand like his technology because it also plays voice memos from him and etc. But that is like his music of choice is ABBA, and so like all these ABBA songs like are fitting into what's going on. So you like seeing these zombies, and I hate zombies. I really don't like zombie stuff, but I love this one so much because it was just so ridiculous to see that difference. But the characterization works too, because like the heart of the episode is all on Troy, of like Troy and Abed's relationship, and Troy not wanting to be a nerd, and so he doesn't want to like do the Halloween costume he had playing with Abed, because girls will be like, oh, he's a nerd and like the way he looks. And then he sees how Jeff is about it. He's like, oh, I want to be cool like Jeff. And then that ends up being Jeff's downfall, is he's not willing to look like a nerd by crawling out of this one room, and he ends up getting eaten by zombies. Is like, maybe being a nerd is the only way to be. And so he's able to step into that. And then that lasts for like 5 seconds. Like, I don't know why I thought this would work, and all the zombies are swarming him and they end up biting him, and he's like, all right, fine, geez, you got me, guys, you got me, congratulations, you bit me.
And you talked about this moment on last week's episode too.
I did. It was so funny. I just like, that's the funniest part of it to me. But I love also like Chang, like trying to get people to guess what his costume is and trying to get them to guess wrong on purpose so that he can call them racist. And so like when the zombie outbreak first happens and then Chang comes on the corner, he's like, hey, guess who I'm dressed as? And all the zombies turn around and look at him. He's like, or not. And he like runs away.
Well, and this zombie episode started the whole season-long plotline of, is Chang the father of Shirley's baby?
Yes, it did. It's like, that's a really weird plot line that they went with. And pretty much anything they went with Chang is weird, because Chang is just a bad character in my opinion. But this
1 through 3, he's good then bad. That's a whole other podcast we could talk about. I have a whole lot of thoughts on the rise and fall of Chang, but this episode is really good.
Yeah, limited Chevy Chase in it, but that, that's okay. I like when he's like going at first, he's dressed as Kirk from Star Trek, and so like when he first is the one showing sickness, like no one knows what's going on, and like Jeff is like, oh man, you better go see someone before your swelling causes you to like be a method actor or whatever, like make your costume more real or something like that. And then Chevy Chase is like, what? I don't get it. Shut up. And then he like,
this is another example of, there's a lot of episodes of Community where it seemed like they found a way to either like shoot Chevy Chase out early on or just not have him be part of the group. Like I just watched the Impressions episode, and the whole time at the party, like Pierce is just arguing with the doorman, trying to convince him that he's Burt Reynolds, so that he's not part of the whole group. It's this kind of, you see early on, like Chevy Chase might have not been so great to work with. It's like, you know what, we're just gonna have Pierce get killed right away, or killed in quotes by the zombies right away, and then he's not part of the group the rest of the time. It happens so often in Community.
Or they make his relationship with the rest of the group be like the big antagonistic one for the episode. So the other one, because we've talked about this one so much, and I know I'm cheating here, but everyone loves paintball. Everyone loves the paintball episodes of Community. I think the best one that they did was a fistful of paintballs in season 3. Special guest star Josh Holloway. Season 3 episode. No, you're right. Season 2 episode 22. And so, that one, they did this Western theme, and the whole like concept behind it, they don't tell you like that this is what had happened beforehand, but everyone is operating under this whole like, we had just voted, should Pierce be in the study group next year or should we kick him out? Mm-hmm. And Annie was the only one who was like, we should give him another chance, and everyone else wanted to kick him out. And so like how he is during that paintball game is like on prime display. Like that's the heart of what's going on in that episode, apart from them also trying to outlive in this paintball game. That's a really fun episode. That's my favorite paintball one that they do.
It goes back and forth between that one and the original one for me.
Yeah, the original one's great too. Yeah. I like that setting a little bit more. When they like, it has a good conclusion too when they do the Star Wars one following that, the Star Wars theming. But even that, like that pales in comparison to like the setup of this. It just like that Western feel, especially with having Josh Holloway in there, it fits really well the aesthetic they're going for.
And it was coming right off his fame for Lost, because Lost had just ended, I think.
Yeah, it either just ended or was like still like right there at its heyday. No, it hadn't ended because it ended when Angie and I got married in 2010, and so this was like 2008 or 2009.
So it would have been 10 because the Community started in 2009. So second season.
Oh, so this was 2000. Okay, so it was like right then. Right
the last season.
I thought I remembered. I thought I was still like in college in dormitories when this episode was being advertised, but
back to the Halloween episode, the one that we're actually talking about. What I like about the Halloween episodes is Community always did good with like really unique, like clever costumes for the characters, because it was always like super like deep cut stuff. Like, you know, Pierce was Captain Kirk, and Abba and Troy was it the alien versus like the Transformer guy?
Ripley. Well, it was Ripley in the like big metal suit.
Yeah, it kind of made me think back to all the Homestar Runner cartoons. Whenever they did the Halloween episodes, they'd have the most obscure costumes, and at the end, you'd be able to like hover over and see what everyone was. Like one of them, Coach Z was Theo from the Cosby Show in the episode early on where he had like a really badly designed T-shirt, shirt that he paid for. Like how deep cut of a reference this is to do a Theo Huxtable from one specific episode of the Cosby Show, and that's your Halloween costume reference.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. And Community kind of had that same feel.
Except for Britta. Britta never had like a good costume. Hers was always like, you know, and they definitely did this on purpose. It was like that one person who shows up and they like have like this such a generic one. Like in this one, she was a dinosaur. It's like, great, good for you. You're a generic dinosaur. That's awesome.
Britta also tried to always be the opposite of like the sexy nurse. Like she didn't want to be like, oh, I'm gonna use it as an excuse to dress sexy like a lot of girls do. So that's why in the first season she was like a giant squirrel in a fluffy costume, and then she was a dinosaur. And I forget what she was in the next one, but every time it's like she did the opposite of like the sexy girl outfit.
And this was the episode too that was my favorite of the guest star doctor. Is it Rich? I just watched it today, and I don't Rich. Yeah. So he was in the banana suit, but like he had the best lines that he had in any episode in this one, where you know, like he ends up getting bit, and they're like, oh, you're bit, you're fake. He's like, I know, I just thought I was special.
Yeah.
And then like how Jeff is like, you know what? Now that you're a zombie, I actually like you more. That's how much I hate regular Rich.
Yeah. Well, then that's a great moment. So he's like, I thought I was special, and Britta's like, no, I'm special. I was bad and I'm fine. And then Jeff's like, nobody is special.
Oh, I also like when Dean like locks the door on them, like right in front of them as they're trying to escape from the zombies, and all that Jeff goes is like
he's like, a little bitty quarantine.
Oh, this is good. Good episode. That was so funny. I recommend it. I actually texted someone who they don't watch Community, and I'm like, okay, I know you like ABBA, and I know you like Halloween time. This is an episode you need to watch. I'm not going to give you any like context of anything. I'm like, just trust me, watch just this episode because it stands on its own. And so hopefully they do that.
All right. So my number one is an episode that I know you don't watch, Matt, but I'm going to recommend you watch just this episode because it is so funny. It is one of the most meta episodes I've ever seen in any show. Do you know anything about the meta episode of Supernatural?
No, I don't.
Okay. It's called The French Mistake, and it's in season 6. And the thing is, I think it's like a demon or some creature that they've been hunting throws Sam and Dean into a reality where all of a sudden their lives are a TV show called Supernatural. So it's like they're on the set of Supernatural and everything else is real world, but they are still the fictional characters, Sam and Dean. And like it's basically just them getting a chance to make fun of their own show. Like one of the characters I talked about, like their like father figure in the show was named Bob Singer, or Bobby Singer, and then the Bobby Singer was named after one of the producers. And when they realized what's going on, and then suddenly they realized the producer's name is Bobby Singer, and they're like, "You're so conceited! You named a character after yourself." And one of the other leads, so Misha Collins plays Castiel, who's an angel on the show, and they run into him like, Cass, what's going on? And he's like, you know, obviously like, what are you talking, guys? We're on set, and he's like pulling out his phone, tweeting like, gotta love Jared and Jensen playing jokes again, and all this kind of stuff. But when he was doing that, he was actually tweeting. So at the time, you can look back, Misha Collins had actual tweets about like the jokes that Jensen and Jared were playing on him. But in the show, it was them not realizing that, that we're actual people. We're not fictional characters anymore. And
it's nuts.
Yeah. And another like obvious one is earlier in the show, there was a woman who played a demon. and she was like a big villain in the show. But she was played by Jared Padalecki's real life wife, and so like they go to Jared's house, and all of a sudden they see her walking down the stairs, and all of a sudden they get into the like fighting stance. Oh my God, I thought we killed you. What's going on? And she's like, "What are you talking about, honey?" Like,
That'd be trippy.
yeah. And the whole thing was like everyone's surprised that they're hanging out because in their version of like the real world, Jensen and Jared were like were fighting, like they never talked to each other offset, and like everyone's like, why are they acting all buddy now? Like everyone's acting so weird. They hate each other. And I'm not doing it justice, but it's just pulling back the curtain of like showing all the real world that we see, like their trailers, we see their houses, we see like the behind the scenes of the set through the eyes of these guys still in character.
That's unique. What was the like the point of the episode?
I forget what the whole thing was, and I think the whole point of the episode was basically just to have this fun idea to do this for this episode.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I forget who the big bad was that season, but it was like some demon or something they were hunting, and I think he was just messing with them. Because I think that's the same season they did an episode where it's an alternate reality, and like everything is different, and everything's different to us, but the characters don't notice anything different. And then someone mentions like, have you ever heard of some ship called the Titanic? And they're like, no, what? And then like turns out that this is like the alternate universe if the Titanic never sank, and it's like the chain of events of like all these people never died, and they're like, and they're realizing it, like apparently there's some old boat that like sank and it didn't sink now, and that's why everything's different. And it's just like that's another one that was, I think it's the same like bad guy who would just like mess with them and change reality.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I do that for my kids, but I call it pranks.
Yes.
So,
but I mean, it's called The French Mistake. It's in season 6. It's seriously one of the funniest episodes of Supernatural that you could ever watch.
Nice. Yeah. I'll have to look that up. So it's really funny that we have like both Smallville and because I feel like Supernatural is one of those shows too that it's so broad with its like you don't really like everything is weird that you can do a bunch of different genres. I'm sure that they had like all the different types of genres represented as they went through it.
They also did an episode where all of a sudden they're animated and they're like with Scooby-Doo, and like
I was gonna say I didn't know that one.
Yeah, they did like they're fanboying over like we're in a cartoon with Scooby-Doo. It's just like at a certain point in that show, he's like, why not? Why not do it? You already had the emotional arc. Your dad died. You killed the demon. Let's just whatever.
You know what? At this point, people are still gonna watch it. They're either gonna watch it or they're not. So we're just gonna.
Yeah, I still never finished that show. I never watched like the last like 6 seasons of that show.
Did they finish that show?
Yeah, they did. They finished it up. It just finished in 2020. It ran from 2005 to 2020.
It's ridiculous. Although it feels like it should have been long. Like it feels like it's been going on forever. That 15 years feels short to me.
Yeah. Well, it's another show is kind of like that. Where like, why not? At that point was Criminal Minds, which I guess is already coming back for a reboot on Paramount Plus. The show just ended because over the 15 years of that show, like a lot of the big episodes are the ones where one of our main characters got kidnapped by the bad guy and they got to try to find him, which sounds intense, except pretty much every character had been kidnapped at some point in the 15 years. It happens to all of them. You know,
I got yelled at once for having never watched Criminal Minds. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, I do. That's a flashback.
That's a flashback and a half. That was like the first couple weeks that we started the podcast.
Yeah, that's when I was still married.
And when you were still married. And when she actually, would listen to a podcast.
Every now and then, yes.
My wife still doesn't listen to them, which is fine. I don't listen to hers.
Did she listen to one that she was on or not even that one?
No, I'm like, I get why you wouldn't listen to ones that you're on because like, what was said. You were there. You were on it.
Yeah.
I don't know if she listened to that or not.
Sometimes I go back and listen to an old episode of ours. Like I listened to our old Stranger Things episode after we recorded our second Stranger Things episode.
Nice. I'll listen to us every now and then, but it is really funny to hear like celebrities that do the same thing, like in the Friends reunion when they're talking about like, oh, this was just on, and like I'm just flipping through, and I was like, oh, well, my kids haven't seen this, so just let them see this episode, and like how much of a flashback that is for them. I'm sure. Like,
well, that's in the new
in there.
The new podcast, which I'll plug, Pod Meets World. It's Will Friedle, Ryder Strong, and Danielle Fishel, who's Eric Shawn at the Panga from Boy Meets World. They're doing their own rewatch podcast. Mm-hmm. And they've already had a bunch of the cast. They had Minkus, they had Alan, they had Feeney on so far. And I guess Shawn has like never watched Boy Meets World. He never watched the episodes. I think he's seen a couple of them here and there. So they're all remembering like their times from filming it. But for watching it, it's his first time ever actually watching the show that he was on 20 years ago.
Wow. I know that like Johnny Depp doesn't watch his stuff, but that is like from what it sounds like is like I feel uncomfortable watching myself act. Kind of like how people don't like want to listen to themselves on like like when they leave a voicemail, like, oh, I sound like that.
Yeah. So like whenever I would make just like dumb videos for youth group back in the day, I would not be in all of them because I'll admit I'm not a good actor. I'm not a good performer on screen. Like even this morning or at the beginning of this podcast with your bit, I'm like, I don't know what my part of this is. But I like the editing. I like directing other people. I like the behind the scenes camera part of it. So that's why I would do that more.
What's my part? I don't want to be involved in this. Get it out of my face. You take it and run with it. All right. Well, speaking of yourself getting recorded and being on camera, my number one pick here, it's a little bit of a cheat because like not the whole episode isn't completely out of this genre, but it's like enough of it is. And that is from The Office in season 7, episode 17. Threat Level Midnight. I feel like that completely fits for a genre pick. And this is how, like, one of the few ways that they could do a genre bending episode in this universe. And it like makes sense because they have very strict rules that they couldn't break to do some sort of genre bending. But this was the way you do it. And it was. So for those who don't know, Threat Level Midnight is this movie that Michael Scott had worked on for like 10 years of his life. And you saw references to it like throughout the series leading up to that. Like a couple times they had brought up Threat Level Midnight, and they actually had an episode like 3 or 4 seasons prior to that, probably more than that, where they found the actual script of it for the first time. And by they, I mean like the people in the office. So they found that script and they're all reading it and they're like laughing about it and like think that it's like the funniest thing, and like they have a whole episode as they're reading the script. But then they take it one step further and they have it like, okay, Michael actually made this movie, and he made that movie over these years. And so like because he had been working on it for so long, you can have people back from like season 3, like Karen comes back, or like how Jan was a part of his life during
Roy was in it, or Tony Gardner, which still doesn't make sense, but whatever.
Yeah. And so they were able to do this, and it was such a well done idea because it is like, what if Michael Scott shot an action movie? And it delivers on that premise really, really well. It is over the top. It is ridiculous, but it's Michael Scott. So of course it's going to be that way. And that's part of the fun. And so it's an episode that is really good fan service. And you just have fun watching it. And the people that are in it, you can tell they're having fun watching it. And then also like there's that added level of meta because you see the cast of you see the characters on The Office watching this movie character. And so they're responding to it as their characters would respond to it. And it's really funny because like too, they're all so excited to see it because they actually put in work for this, and they actually tried it, and they're like, I want to see this movie that we're all a part of, that we've been filming for years. We're finally able to see it. I want to see what it looks like. And it's really well done. It's really funny, like so many great jokes in it, so many great gags. And it also works as lampshading the action movie genre too. And so it's kind of like Oscar even says in the episode, he's like, there's a part of me that wants to analyze it, but I know I shouldn't.
Yeah.
But it's like there are things that are commentary in it, as funny as it sounds.
Well, at the end you realize there's a huge plot hole. It's like the president called him like, wasn't the president revealed to be evil? And even Michael's like, whatever.
Oh yeah. And like the heart of the episode too is like Michael like wants to impress Holly, and like what he's been working on, like this is his dream and this is like who he is this accomplishment of his. And so like they hadn't seen the full version, people in the office, because they would laugh in it, and he's like, I don't want people laughing at my movie, so he'd like stop it in the middle of them watching. And so halfway through in this episode, Holly's like clearly not like loving it, and he's like, what are you kidding me, like this is the greatest thing I've ever done. And they even have a conversation where he's like, you know, like if I don't have this, what do I have? And like realizing now that he's got Holly, this doesn't matter as much. Like that's what his dream is. And so if people make fun of this, fine, whatever. It's just something that he put together, a fun thing that he did, and that's no longer where his worth is.
Definitely. And I mean, we could always nitpick a little bit, because I mean, it's also in real world just a fun way to like have a casting call of all these different people. But like, for instance, Roy would never do this. Roy doesn't even want to go out to drinks with coworkers. Pam couldn't convince him to sit there and be a hostage. Like Jan, maybe when she was it had to have been when she was dating Michael in season 4 is the only time that Jan would have done it.
And then same with Pam's mom of like, you can see that she would do it, but it's like the limited amount of time that they had to do that to get her into the movie. Like I don't specifically buy it, but also I think because like they have Karen in it. They have season 3 characters in it when they're clearly in season 3. And I think season 3 was the season when they found Threat Level Midnight, was it not? And so if they found the script in that,
I thought it was season 2.
It could have been season 2, but if it was season 2, then like that's 1 year of turnaround to get to that. And
that's
so
true.
I was like, where would he have started at those bar scenes with the Scarn? Because that's where Karen is. So it's like, you're taking liberties with it 100%. But
I'm trying to think, where was Michael because like everybody was there. I was thinking that I thought it was maybe when he was at business school, but it couldn't be because Ryan was reading parts in that as well.
Like that could have been a different, because like you look at the different scenes and they easily could have done it at different points. Because like the one with Ryan, he's there for the Olympic tryout or whatever at the ice skating rink.
Oh no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when they were reading this season 2. I think it was season 2 when they were reading the script. Like everyone in the office was there except for Michael. So was that maybe when Michael was with Jan and they were doing at Chili's, like selling to Tim Meadows?
That might have been. Yeah, that sounds right. I think that's what it was. I was gonna look it up, but you know what? I think we'll go with it. Because like there's a couple times when Michael's away and then like something else happens without him, like, you know, when he's selling with Carol selling the condo, but what's happening is the Flunkerton and the Olympics during that one, and you know, so I think that is the one that lines up though.
Yeah, because no one else in the office is with Michael except for Jan.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay. So you said you had some honorable mentions?
I do. I had 3 I wanted to bring up. One that was the closest to making my list was from The Simpsons. Simpsons has done a lot of genre bending too, but theirs is more like parody more than it is genre bending. But this one really actually it works as both. And that is the season 6 finale, episode 25 called Who Shot Mr. Burns. It is parodying the big cliffhanger of Who Shot JR from Dallas all the years before that. But it's a murder mystery, and it works really, really well as that, because it's that type of episode where, and again, Smallville, like talking about how Smallville done it. Smallville had a murder mystery episode too. So it's like, you know, everyone has the reason to kill Mr. Burns. They do a really good job of setting that up, and they play to those tropes. And then, you know, every single, like, oh, why aren't they around? Or like, here's the Chekhov's gun that we're going to show. Or they talk about the sundial early on in the episode as, again, a Chekhov's gun of that's where he lands, and Mr. Burns dies sprawled out on the sundial. And so they do a really good job of setting that up in this, and then having a good mystery. And then even at the end, the Dr. Hibbert is like, well, I can't solve this. Can you? And he's pointing at the camera, and then the camera kind of like zooms out. I mean, it's animated, so, but you know, so it zooms out, and then he's talking to Chief Wiggum. He's like, well, I guess I'll try. I mean, that's what I get paid for, right? But it's a nice little meta moment. But Who Shot Mr. Burns is a really good episode. It's like, that's like quintessential Simpsons back, like during their heyday, you know, up until like season 11, they were like every single episode was great. So
Yeah.
season 6, episode 25 was really well done. Another one, we talked about Scrubs already, and we brought up Scrubs. There's an episode called My Life in 4 Cameras.
Oh yeah, that's
Scrubs,
a really good one. Yeah.
season 4, episode 17, and that's kind of like half and half, because they don't really even get to the genre bending until like halfway through the episode.
Yeah.
But the episode is about like JD in his mind, like picturing what his life would be like if they were like, if it was a sitcom and if things were treated like a sitcom, because he meets one of the writers of Cheers. It's not really a writer from Cheers. It's just a different actor that they're like, oh, he played that. But that guy is sick. And so is like, whoa, what would my life be like if it was a sitcom? And this loses points for me, which is why I didn't hit the top 3, because the whole heart of the episode is kind of like we have TV, like when things are getting really heavy, things don't work out in life like it does on a sitcom. Not everything's wrapped up in a nice little bow tie. But when that happens and when you need to escape, you at least have like media and you have entertainment and TV for that. I'm like, it's kind of a crap message to end on. Like, sure, you might be right, but you wasted a lot of goodwill of it.
But Matt, they have Clay Aiken in it.
They do have Clay Aiken singing "Isn't She Lovely?" But one of my favorite parts of the episode isn't even in the sitcom world. It's like right at the beginning of the episode, because a part of like the episode for Turk and Carla is they're trying to compare themselves to JD and his new girlfriend, and like, have we lost that love? Or like, it's not a competition, but we should be winning. And so like early in the episode, like JD is arm wrestling with his girlfriend, and like he lets her win, and he's like, oh, you got me, and then they kiss, and it's like all sweet. And so Carla's trying to do that too, and it's just trying to like get Turk to pick up on these hints of let me win, and Turk's like doesn't get it at all. He slams Carla's hand down.
Yes,
like,
I remember.
Do you see what happens, Carla? Do you see what happens when you mess with the warrior? Like, I love that line so much.
That is a tremendous line. I didn't realize that was the same episode. Was that when he was dating Mandy Moore?
No, I can't remember what her name is. I think this is the only black girl that he dates on the.
Oh,
on
her! I remember her. Yeah, the one.
What's her name?
I don't think she's like a particularly famous actress.
Yeah, she's not. I've seen her in stuff before, but like she's only in for like 2 or 3 episodes. It's
I know. I remember her. Yeah,
but yeah, don't remember her name. Oh, and then the final one that I got is from House. This actually, weirdly enough, this is the episode that I think of when I think of TV shows that bend genres. And there was an episode of House in season 7, episode 15, called Bombshells. And this was an episode when Cuddy and House are dating. They've been dating for season 7. They finally have gotten together after 6 seasons of flirting. And so they're dating, and then it gets to the middle of the season. And the episode starts where Cuddy like has blood in her urine, and she's like, I don't know what's going on. So she's like really worried, and it seems to kind of like as she's getting these tests, like, oh, they find a mass and they find all this sort of stuff. And so then it's kind of like, well, how does House respond to this? How does he be there for her? And like at first he doesn't even want to be in the room, because he kind of is doing this avoidance thing, because he's like, I'm not good at that situation, and he doesn't want to make it worse. And it's like their relationship is so fragile, he doesn't want to destroy it. And so all of this is happening through like different flashbacks as this thing goes on. They're having not flashbacks, they're having dreams. So like Cuddy will wake up from a dream, but in the dream it was like it's a sitcom, and in another dream House wakes up and it's a zombie apocalypse one. And that's like such a great scene, because he has like he's fighting in this zombie thing, and like there's Chase, who's a zombie, and all the other dog, I can't even Taub, that like they're all zombies. And so like at first he like fights off Chase, and then he stands up, and then he like pushes a button on his cane, and an axe comes out. He's like, good thing I brought my axe cane. And like he cuts off Chase's head, and then he turns it into a shotgun. So like it's really fun. Then they do old black and white like Dick Van Dyke type show, and then they do they end with like a musical number where we get to hear Hugh Laurie actually sing, and sounds pretty good. And so like that episode, it's not one genre. They play with like 5 or 6 different genres, as both Cuddy and House are like, how are we going to respond to this? How can House be there for her? And the episode ends with them breaking up, because in order to be there for her and finally be in the room with her, he had to take Vicodin to like get himself into a spot that he could be there. And it's like, well, you're just an addict. You're always being an addict. So it ends up pretty sad. But for some reason, this is always the episode I think of whenever I think of anything genre bending, because it does that like 5 times in the episode.
That sounds like a good one. I never watched much of House. Like I was always aware of it, but I never actually dove into House.
I gave you the broad strokes of their whole arc. After 6 seasons, they end up together and then they break up. There you go.
Well, now you spoiled it.
Now I spoiled it.
I feel like if the show is off the air for so long, like there's no spoiler warnings at that point.
Yeah, and especially if it's a relationship that's a will they, won't they? They do every time. If it's a will they, won't they? They always will, whether they end up together or not. They
Not
always do.
Sam and Diane did not in Cheers, and that was one of the originators. So I think my thing is like, I think every decade has like a big like will they, won't they. 80s had Sam and Diane from Cheers, 90s had Ross and Rachel from Friends, 2000s had Jim and Pam from The Office, and the 2010s had Jake and Amy on Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
I feel like the 2010s crown is up for grabs because I think while Jake and Amy are a good will they, won't they, I don't think that's like the quintessential, whereas like the other 3 that you mentioned are absolutely quintessential. So
yes.
But yeah, I think 2010s is like everyone was just doing it. Like there are so many shows by that point that were doing it that it's no longer like that quintessential of like, oh, who is going to be that? So
yeah. All right.
Maybe a little bit of Robin and Ted.
That show is like at the time was so like on the same level as some of these popular shows. Like ever since the finale, it's just died down in popularity so much. It did not age well. But at the time, it was like, did you watch How I Met Your Mother? Of course I did. Everyone knows it. Let's Go to the Mall. Everyone knows that song.
Everyone does know that song. You don't even have to be Canadian to know it.
No.
It's true. All right. Well, there we have it, guys. There are our genre bending episodes. Last week, we talked with our buddy Brandon, and he had some thoughts to share about what did we even talk about?
We talked about Lovable Oafs.
Seinfeld. Lovable Oafs, that's right. And so one of the guys that we talked about was Kramer from Seinfeld. So we end up having 2 different trivia questions that had to do with Kramer. And so one of the questions was Kramer never has a real job, but he has like all these side hustles. So what side hustle did Kramer use at a police station to make money? And that was he stood in police lineups for money. The other one is in the pilot episode, Jerry calls Kramer by a different name. And so in season 9, they actually explain the discontinuity. But what was the original name that Jerry gave to Kramer? And it was Kessler. Kessler. So if you had either of those right, give yourself a point.
This is like Whose Line Is It? The points mean nothing.
That's right. The points are like Paul Risdall's opinion on the Muppets. Doesn't matter.
Speaking of, before we get to this week's trivia, next week we're finally doing an actual episode about the Muppets.
So it's time to light the music. Light it up. Take the music and light it on fire.
This is why I had to get another guest host who, as a big Muppet fan.
Hey, misspeaking is not the same as not knowing. All right.
I know, but that is too good of an opening. Anyways, This week's trivia, I talked about the Boy Meets World episode, and then there was Sean. And we talked about how Jennifer Love Hewitt was a guest star because of her connection to the I Know What You Did Last Summer movies. There's one other reason they brought Jennifer Love Hewitt on to that episode of Boy Meets World. Do you know why?
Yes. Because she said yes. I'm sorry. I answered the trivia already for you guys.
All right. Well, I guess there's a third reason.
No way. That doesn't even make sense. Well, hey, as always, let us know what are some genre bending episodes that you liked. What did we miss? What are you like? Oh yeah, you guys talked about this one. It was really good. I agree. That Community episode is the best episode of Community. And if it's still on there, look and see about the Community episode we did. We talked about some of our favorite tropes that they mocked, and it was a good episode. I like that episode. So until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.